Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the B segment of episode 56 of Codename Kids Next Door, Operation Fishy. We begin this segment in number 3's room at the Sector V Treehouse, where we see number 4 tapping on a fish bowl, growing frustrated that the fish in the bowl isn't really doing anything. Number 3 tells number 4 to stop bothering the fish. She calls the fish Mr. Fishy, by the way, and she reminds number 4 that he agreed to help place a giant rainbow monkey toy in her room. If I'm not mistaken, I believe number 3 calls the giant rainbow monkey toy a Super Sumo Smackdown Rainbow Monkey. Number 4 gives the yeah response, but when number 3 turns away, number 4 begins to shake the fish bowl, demanding that Mr. Fishy do something. After he finishes shaking the bowl, number 4 sees that Mr. Fishy seems to have died, and he begins to panic. When number 3 turns around to face number 4 again, and she sees Mr. Fishy, number 4 quickly apologizes and tries to come up with some ridiculous explanation for what happened to Mr. Fishy. Number 3 thinks that Mr. Fishy is simply asleep right now, and she tells her teammates that they need to remain quiet and head to a different location for the time being. So number 3 leaves her room, and the 4 other Sector V operatives begin to come up with a plan. Number 1 comments that number 1 comments that they need to dispose of Mr. Fishy quickly, or else a certain someone will notice Mr. Fishy's scent. Shortly afterwards, we see what number 1 is talking about when we head to the crazy old cat lady's house. The crazy old cat lady is asleep, but she wakes up when she smells Mr. Fishy, and she orders her cat army to bring her the fish. So, yes, the crazy old cat lady and her cat army begin to make preparations. Likewise, we see that the Sector V operatives, besides number 3, are making preparations of their own. Number 2 and number 4 will dispose of Mr. Fishy. They're going to go to one of the furthest points in the treehouse to do so. Number 2 is apparently the only one who knows the precise way to get to this particular destination. Number 1 and number 5 are going to find a replacement fish, thinking that number 3 won't know the difference between Mr. Fishy and Mr. Fishy's replacement. Number 2 comments that they don't have much time, so they need to begin their mission quickly. So number 2 and number 4 begin to head off to one of the furthest points of the treehouse. We also see that number 4 is slowly starting to gain a fondness towards Mr. Fishy. And number 1 and number 5 head off to go find a replacement fish. Number 3 returns to her room to see if Mr. Fishy is awake, but she finds the fish bowl empty. She also notices drops of water from the fish bowl heading out to one of the balconies of the treehouse. Number 3 suspects that fish nappers have arrived. We then head to number 2 and number 4, who are continuing to head to one of the furthest points in the treehouse. Number 4 is shown to grow a little more appreciative, or having more of a fondness. Yes, number 4 is starting to grow more of a fondness for Mr. Fishy slowly still. But number 4 also inquires about this destination. Number 2 points out the destination from where they are, and yes, it is one of the furthest points in the treehouse. Number 4 thinks that's such a long way and inquires why they don't just let the crazy old cat lady have Mr. Fishy. Number 2's answer is along the lines about how a cat will keep coming back for more if the cat is fed once. Yes, that's essentially number 2's answer to number 4. And number 2 also comments that number 2 warns number 4 that they need to be careful while they travel further into the treehouse because the further points of the treehouse are less stable compared to the parts of the treehouse that are visited more often. Suddenly, number 2 and number 4 realize that they're being followed. More specifically, they're being followed by members of the crazy old cat lady's cat army. These particular members of the cat army are essentially human-sized cats riding on even bigger cats. Number 2 and number 4 try to make a run for it, and eventually, eventually they break through the pathway of the treehouse that they're walking on, so they fall into an inner chamber of these further points of the treehouse. So they do manage to escape from the cat army members, but they are quickly, they're quickly surrounded by a different group. Meanwhile, we see that number 1 and number 5 have gone to either a carnival or a fair. They're at a stand where, for a game where if you throw a ping pong ball into a fishbowl, you get to win the fish that's in that particular fishbowl. The person running the stand, we'll just call him the carny for the time being. The carny mentions that it's only $1 to play the game, and number 5 comments that number 1 is not very good at the game because number 1 volunteered to play the game, and number 5 says that number 1 isn't very good at the game. And we do see that number 5 has a point. Number 1 isn't successful in winning a fish, but the carny doesn't mind if number 1 tries again. That's more money for him after all. Back with number 2 and number 4, we see that they were surrounded by guinea pigs. Number 2 explains to number 4 that the guinea pigs were the ones who powered the treehouse before the kids next door acquired hamsters. And we see the guinea pigs number 2 also figures that the guinea pigs must have taken residence in the parts of the treehouse that aren't used very often. The guinea pigs are rummaging through number 2 and number 4's items, and they find the bag that Mr. Fishy is in. Number 4 tries to tell the guinea pigs to be careful, and number 2 brings up the crazy old cat lady and her cat army have invaded the treehouse, and he warns the guinea pigs that they might, they want to eat Mr. Fishy, or the crazy old cat lady wants to eat Mr. Fishy, and number 2 comments about that the guinea pigs could be in danger if they cross paths with the cat army. The guinea pigs do decide to let number 2 and number 4 go, and they also give them directions for exiting this interior part of the treehouse that they're in. Number 2 and number 4, number 2 thanks the guinea pigs for their help and letting them go, and number 2 also assures the guinea pigs that they'll try to get rid of the cat army quickly. After number 2 and number 4 leave, a shadowy individual, or an individual hiding in the shadows, grabs some of the guinea pigs, demanding to know where Mr. Fishy is. The voice of this individual indicates that the individual is number 3, who's hiding in the shadows. Meanwhile, we see number 1 continues to try and play the game to win a fish, but he still isn't successful. Back with number 2 and number 4, number 4 is growing more and more fond of Mr. Fishy. Number 2 notices this and offers to hold on to Mr. Fishy for now, but number 4 quickly and defensively says no, before quickly regaining his composure and insisting that it's okay with him to still hold Mr. Fishy. So number 2 and number 4 are very close to their destination. They just have to go down the ledge that they're on and then just a little walking distance away. But when they reach the top of the ledge that they're on, they see the crazy old cat lady and her cat army are waiting for them. The crazy old cat lady demands to have Mr. Fishy, and the cat army prepare to attack. Number 2 and number 4 notice, though, that they've received help in the form of the guinea pigs. The guinea pigs have arrived to help out and fight the cat army. So yes, a fight between the guinea pigs and the cat army begins, and yes, back at the carnival or fair, we see that number 1 is still still trying and failing to win a fish from the game that he's playing. So while the guinea pigs and the cat army fight each other, number 4 eventually climbs up to the destination that he and number 2 were trying to reach. It's a giant toilet where Kids Next Door operatives flush their fish. And number 4 begins to talk to Mr. Fishy about how it was quite a journey getting there. And then we see that number 4 is starting to believe that Mr. Fishy is just asleep, and he thinks that his teammates are jealous of Mr. Fishy, which is why they want to get rid of him. But number 4 won't get rid of Mr. Fishy. Oh no, is what he's saying to Mr. Fishy. Number 2 eventually reaches the base of the giant toilet where number 4 is, urging number 4 to hurry up and flush Mr. Fishy before the crazy old cat lady catches up. And number 4, though, begins to reveal that he doesn't think Mr. Fishy really is dead. Number 2 tries to reason with number 4, but number 4 insists how Mr. Fishy is just asleep, and when he wakes up, number 4 and Mr. Fishy will have so much fun together because they are best friends, or he says something along those lines anyway. Number 2, though, responds that he, number 2, is number 4's best friend. And number 2's words seem to give number 4 some clarity. But then suddenly, the crazy old cat lady arrives. She knocks number 2 away and demands that number 4 hand over Mr. Fishy. The crazy old cat lady grabs the bag that Mr. Fishy is in, but shortly afterwards, number 3 arrives, and number 3 believes that the crazy old cat lady is the fish napper, and she lunges towards the crazy old cat lady. Number 4 can only watch while number 3, the crazy old cat lady, and Mr. Fishy fall through the giant toilet. The next scene shows Mr. Fishy coming out of a pipe and ending up in a fishbowl. The location happens to be the back of the carny's stand. The carny reveals Mr. Fishy's true name to be Eddie, and this was a plan to make more money. The carny gloats to Eddie about how the plan worked perfectly. Eddie just had to pretend to be dead so that the kids would flush him down the toilet. He would end up back at the stand, and the kids would come back to try and win the game to get another fish. That would mean that the carny would get more money. So that was the truth behind what happened to Eddie, aka Mr. Fishy. But then suddenly, number 3 and the crazy old cat lady break through the pipes too. So the stand breaks, and we see number 3 and the crazy old cat lady are there now, much to number 1 and number 5's surprise. The crazy old cat lady is pleased when she sees more fish are right near her. At a later point in time, we see the carny and Eddie are sitting in a room, and the carny is distributing the money that they've earned. Yes, the carny is distributing the money they earned between himself and Eddie and trying to give him a fair share. But Eddie notices that the carny is trying to get more of the cut, and so the segment ends with the carny and Eddie getting into an argument with each other, although Eddie doesn't talk, so we just hear the carny yelling. That's the argument. And yes, like I said, that's how we end this segment. So this segment is another number 2 and number 4 buddy entry. Those entries where number 2 and number 4 are the main focus characters. Although unlike this segment's sibling segment, and unlike other number 2 and number 4 buddy entries, the other Sector V operatives are present for this segment, although number 2 and number 4 could be considered the main focus. We mostly follow number 2 and number 4's journey to reach the giant toilet to flush Mr. Fishy. And while I'm thinking about the journey to the toilet, this segment is essentially an affectionate parody or homage to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Number 4 becoming more and more fond of Mr. Fishy to the point where he was delusional enough to think that Mr. Fishy wasn't dead, although we find out that Mr. Fishy really wasn't dead, but number 4 had no way of knowing that, but I digress. Yes, number 4 becoming more obsessed with Mr. Fishy is meant to reminisce of the obsession over the ring from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And yes, this was definitely a more compressed parody because, yeah, the Lord of the Rings trilogy are known to be quite long, whereas this segment was just a segment. Yes, roughly 11 minutes, give or take a few minutes or a few seconds or minutes maybe. But yes, it's very short compared to the actual Lord of the Rings trilogy, but they still managed to get the same general broad strokes of the trilogy in this segment. And yes, this also does deal with some other, this is another example of the show taking something mundane and bringing it to an over-the-top manner. In this case, the whole idea of pet fishes dying and being flushed down the toilet after they died. Yes, that was the mundane situation, but it was made more over the top with the parody of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And then yes, we find out that the fish really didn't die, although the Sector V operatives had no way of knowing it. The fish and the carny who sold the fish were just trying to make more money so that the kids would go back to get more fish. So yeah, the carny, I know the carny. Some fans have compared the carny to Chester. Chester is another villain in the series who's mostly motivated by making more money. Although some would say that the carny's methods, while underhanded, are pretty tame compared to some of Chester's more notorious money-making schemes. Or yes, Chester has definitely crossed the line further compared to the carny, while the carny is still a sneaky individual. But yes, the crazy old cat lady was actually the main focus villain. Yes, the crazy old cat lady was the focus villain of this segment, much like her debut, Operation Cats. Yes, the crazy old cat lady got to be the spotlight villain for this segment, and we see how obsessed she was with eating a fish. Yes, that goes with that idea that cats like fish, or one of those ideas. And I have to say, the crazy old cat lady definitely pulled out all the stops to try and acquire Mr. Fishy. And yes, we did get to see more of her cat army besides the regular cats that she has. And we saw that those cats could form into a giant cat, but we got to see some human-sized cats that were riding on even bigger cats. I admit, when I first watched this segment, I was a little unnerved by those human-sized cats riding on the giant cats. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they had an entry on TV Tropes' Nightmare Fuel page. I wouldn't be surprised if they were on there. I certainly was a little unnerved by them when I saw them. And yes, this segment also shows how number 3 can be quite terrifying in her own right, when we saw how determined number 3 was to find the fish nappers. The guinea pigs found that out the hard. Or yes, the guinea pigs also saw how terrifying number 3 can be. Oh, speaking of the guinea pigs, that was another detail I liked about this segment. This segment gave us some backstory on the Kids Next Door organization by revealing to us that guinea pigs powered the tree houses before the hamsters. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the guinea pigs' only appearance in the series, at least the guinea pigs that used to power the tree houses. And I think that's kind of a shame. I would have liked to have seen more of the guinea pigs. I would have liked to have seen the guinea pigs interact with the hamsters. I think that could have been that could have made an interesting story, but unfortunately it didn't happen. But like I said, it was still cool to get that backstory information about the Kids Next Door organization, mainly the animals that power the tree houses before the hamsters. Otherwise, I'd say that's about it. So, yes, I did enjoy this parody or homage of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I did like the insight on the guinea pigs previously powering the tree houses, and I do think the crazy old cat lady proved to be quite a formidable foe in this segment of the series. But otherwise, yes, I believe that's about it. So as of this video, we've now discussed the B segment of episode 56 of Codename Kids Next Door on this channel. Take care, and until next time.